The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello and welcome to the June edition of Vision New England's Justice and Mercy webinar series. My name is Bob Atherton and I'll be the host, and I'm here with Mike Froning, who will moderate any questions you have later in the conversation. We're going to talk about an issue today that's at the root of many of the worst social injustices of our day, but strangely it doesn't get talked about a lot, and that's the topic of the objectification of women. The people who are talking about it and writing the books and articles about it are primarily women, which is understandable to a degree. But in my opinion, it's time for that to change. And the church needs to wrestle with this issue and let God transform us so that we can, in turn, help the culture around us change. And really, if that's going to get any traction, we need to have some honest conversations, and this is the beginning of one, I hope. And men need to see what's going on, and men need to understand it and own it, and by the grace of God, move into a different space so that we can be part of leading the way to bring change. We need to dismantle this culture that objectifies women, and instead we need to build a culture that honors women. And personally, as a man, I want to be part of that male voice that says enough is enough. I want to continue letting God change me personally so that I can help lead the larger change. And so we're going to do things a little differently today. We're going to approach the topic from both a male and a female perspective. And I'm excited to welcome my good friend Donna Plourde into the studio, who is the executive director of Real Life Giving and a key leader in the anti-trafficking movement in New England. Real Life Giving advocates for women and youth who are being exploited by the commercial sex industry in New Hampshire, and they do great work in raising awareness and mobilizing response through education, training, prevention initiatives, and community engagement. She's a member of the New Hampshire Human Trafficking Collaborative Task Force and the New Hampshire Traffick Free Coalition. And she's a wonderful lady. So, hey, Donna, welcome. Glad you're in the studio today and glad we can have this conversation.
Thanks, Bob. It's great to be here.
Oh, great. So before we launch on our conversation, let's just talk about a couple of logistics first. Donna and I will talk until about 12:30, and then there will be time for questions, and the webinar will end around 12:45. So if you do have a question, you're in listen-only mode right now, but if you do have a question, you can type it into the questions box that's on the control panel that's in the upper right-hand corner of your screen. And feel free to do that at any time. And Mike is going to be watching for those questions to come in, and then he'll bring them into the conversation later on. So without further ado, let's start in prayer. This is a big topic, and we have a short time to kind of crack the door open on it. So I want to ask for God's blessing. Lord, we thank you for the time and the truth and the heart to really take an honest look at this topic. We pray, Lord, that where each of us are at with it at this point, Lord, that you would take us a step further. I pray for women who are listening who have been affected by it, Lord, that maybe there might even be a touch of healing today. And for men who are listening, Lord, that we could look honestly at how we have kind of managed this issue and acted in light of it. And I pray, Lord, for our transformation and for the transformation of our culture. And I pray now for your blessing on our time. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, so to set the stage, let's just go way back to the beginning and remind ourselves that in the beginning, in the book of Genesis, men and women were both created in the image of God. And what we understand that to mean is that we were created with a complex personhood, if we can say it that way, that is physical, emotional, intellectual, spiritual, social, and vocational, and all of that packaged together reflects who God is. And men are amazing and complex, and women are amazing and complex, and because we each bear the image of God, we each have an inherent dignity. And in God's eyes, when we treat each other in a way that honors that dignity, that's justice, and it's something to enjoy and celebrate and champion. And when we don't treat each other in a way that honors that dignity, that's injustice, and it's something to be genuinely offended by, because God's offended by it, and feel provoked to want to bring change. And so this whole topic of objectification fits in that realm of injustice. And so let's just start with defining it. What are we talking about when we're talking about objectification? Donna, can you get us started off? And just from your perspective, I know that you put together this great definition. Can you just walk us through that and maybe give us an example of what you mean by it?
Sure, Bob. I would say that a simplified basic definition would be what we have here. It's what happens when an individual is not treated as a whole person, that without thoughts, feelings, goals, dreams, desires, but rather as an object to be looked at and appraised, a body that exists for others to use or to simply please them. Every day, women and girls in our culture are inundated with images and scrutiny that continue to reinforce the idea that their value and worth lie in their physical appearance or how hot they are, however you'd like to put that. I can remember, this is really not a new issue by any means. I can remember back in the day when I was in college, walking back, it was in the spring, and walking back towards my dorm and having to go by one of the guys' dorms. And there were a few guys up on the second story porch, sitting out in lawn chairs on the porch, having some beer and evaluating the girls that walked by. They literally, I could see this as I was coming down the road. As a girl passed the dorm, they were literally holding up cards and evaluating them on a scale of 1 to 10. And it was just amazing to me. First of all, I totally took myself out of that situation, was not going to subject myself to that, understandably. But I can remember coming away thinking, they have no idea. Do they have an idea of how offensive this is? Who do they think they are, that this is something that's in any way okay? So it just reinforced that idea again, that objectification, that scrutiny, that evaluation is a continual process that women experience on a regular basis.
Yeah, and obviously something that offends God, and something that we need to take some steps to bring change and address it. And as a guy, I actually hadn't heard of the word objectification until not too long ago. And as I was trying to get my head around it and just really what it was all about, I'm sure even saying that, it can be offensive to a woman. Like, how could you not understand it? How could you not see it? But really, I was trying to understand what was actually happening with objectification. And forgive the example, but the example that came to mind was a coffee maker. And the point that I want to take from this story, it's very simple, but women are different than coffee makers, and let me explain what I'm thinking there. I love coffee, and I'm drinking some right now. I prefer to make my own coffee at home. My coffee maker is pretty basic. It's nothing fancy. But here's the deal. I use my coffee maker when I want. I load it up with the coffee that I want, and when I push the button, it delivers every time. It's an object. It's a thing that sits on my counter. It wasn't created for any higher purpose than for making me coffee. And if it ever broke and was no longer able to make me coffee, I would just throw it out and get another. And, you know, and so for the sake of language here, call me the subject, meaning the one who uses the coffee maker, and we'll call the coffee maker the object, the thing that's being used by me, the subject, the owner of the coffee maker. And I objectify the coffee maker by thinking of it as no more than a tool that I use for my pleasure, which in the case of a coffee maker is entirely appropriate because coffee makers are objects and they're designed to be used, and what they deliver is, you know, hopefully good coffee. It's when men do that with women that it becomes a problem. Women have complex personalities. They have great minds. They have deep emotions. They have exceptional capacities. They have powerful spiritual gifts, and the list just goes on and on and on. And all those things reflect the masterful and the loving design of God, their maker. And stating the obvious, that makes women categorically different than coffee makers. But when a man uses a woman for his own pleasure or gain without any regard for her, without any regard for the whole picture of all she is as a person, without any regard for the dignity that she has in the eyes of God, when we as men treat her or other groups of women with anything less than dignity, it's an extreme injustice to her and an extreme violation of God's design. You know, I think in some ways it's similar to racism, where none of us wants to think of ourselves as a racist, but most of us find over time that not only is racism there in us in varying degrees, but there are actually layers that, if we care, will take a lifetime to peel away layer by layer by layer. And in the same way, objectification is so ingrained in us, especially in men, that most of us won't even notice it's there until someone calls attention to it. And that's what we're doing here in this webinar. And because few voices have called attention to it, objectification just keeps sitting there at the root of many of our worst social injustices. And until we deal with that root, until we deal with objectification, all the dollars and the laws and the movements in the world won't bring an end to any of these issues, because they're being mobilized in a sense by this issue of objectification. So Donna, let's talk about what some of those issues are, some of those social issues that are affected by objectification. Maybe you can start us with the first one.
Sure, Bob. That overemphasis, or as you say, exclusive emphasis on physical appearance, it really is a reminder again that we're under constant scrutiny, constantly on display, constantly being evaluated, and it can really affect us. It's so pervasive, we don't even understand sometimes how insidious it is. For example, I was reading a story not long ago about a young girl who had been interviewed by a psychologist. She was only 7 years old, and what she was asked was, what's the worst thing that someone could say to you? And we might think something along the lines of, I don't want to be your friend, I don't want to play with you, I don't like you, you're mean, things along those lines. But without missing a beat, her first response was, you're fat and you're ugly. And it just shows, again, how pervasive this is and how young, where these young girls are already sensing what's going on in the culture, and they're picking up these signals. And it just is pervasive in the sense that, excuse me, again, calling that unwanted attention. And what happens is, I don't think it's understood necessarily how that really creates a sense of vulnerability too. When you're experiencing disrespectful comments, or advances such as, people making comments that don't even know you, catcalling perhaps, or things along those lines. It can also make you feel like, wait a second, that there's a sense of entitlement going on here. And that does increase your vulnerability and does make you more cautious, more concerned about your environment, where you are, making sure that you're aware of your surroundings at different times. These are all things, there's a reason that women are very, very careful when they walk into a dark parking garage, for example. So you can see where these things that are seemingly on one level could be considered innocuous, partly because they're so pervasive in our culture today, really do set a tone for leading into some of these further issues.
Yeah, and it's so important to kind of bring them out into the open so we can just look at them and say, I feel like as a man, I'm like, oh gosh, how horrible that anyone would have to have that extra level of guardedness about them, and just feel like they're constantly under the gun, or under the scrutiny. And so thank you for talking about that. One of the other things that is really has really hit many of the women who are very close to me in my life is inequality in the workplace, where women are really thought of as they're barely regarded, they're barely honored, they're really thought of as second-class citizens, and that gets reflected in the level of respect that they get, which is usually much less than what the men are getting. The level of pay they get, that's gotten some national publicity but needs to get more. And even the opportunities that they are offered, many times the doors are closed to women that are open to men. And we hate the thought, some of us do, that would still exist in our culture, but it is alive and well, believe you me. And I've experienced that personally with some of the women that are close to me in my life. So yes, another issue there.
Absolutely, Bob. And I can say I can relate to that myself, having been in just the working environment for many years and have experienced some of those very things myself. And I do think that those experiences need to be talked about and shared because there's power in story. And of course, another aspect that is incredibly pervasive in our culture today is the use of pornography and the advertising that we're seeing as well. When we look at what's happening as far as the objectification of women and how this relates, so much of the advertising is geared at using women's sexuality to sell product. And then the pornography itself, when we consider how it has become increasingly violent and degrading in recent years, especially increasingly so, there's an extreme lack of mutuality. Women are portrayed as weak and submissive and basically willing to endure, or even portrayed as enjoying pretty much anything that someone wants to perpetrate against them. The violence has become normalized, and it's affecting our view of how we perceive women, certainly, and our view of relationships.
Right. Yeah. And even last night I was watching a show, and there was an ad on that the woman had hardly any clothes on, and that had nothing to do with the product they were selling. And all I could think of was that I think there used to be a day when they actually tried to sell their products based on the merit of the product, rather than just marching scantily clad women across the screen and trying to draw buying power from that. It's really horrific how that has been played, and just another aspect of the culture there. Yeah. And of course, this kind of develops into more violent acts of sexual advance and physical advance, where rape and sexual assault and domestic sexual abuse and violence are happening still really at epidemic levels. And I heard this one story not too long ago about this grandfather who was an elder in his church, and I won't say where it was, but you know, it became known that he was regularly sexually assaulting his granddaughter, and he was called to task on it, and his line was, "Well, that's what she's there for," and and he continued as an elder in the church, and you know, didn't get disciplined at all. Everybody just kind of turned their eyes away from it, and you know, boy, how can that stuff just continue in our culture? And you know, and we need to know that that's happening. We need to hear the stories so that we can get provoked to action. Really start turning the tide on this, because those attitudes are really much more at the core of our culture than we want to give, that we want to admit. And you know, so you know, part of what I want to help do is raise awareness of this larger issue of objectification and all the ways in which it impacts different issues in our society, and start moving things forward for how we can address it. And you know, so Donna, you and I are both involved in the world of human trafficking and addressing human trafficking, that is, and you know, and so maybe you can talk with us a little bit about that.
Sure. I think at this point, what happens is you can see kind of a continuum here unfolding from that end of things where it's starting with what we kind of said was fairly innocuous in a sense, the unwanted attention, but it continues to convey and reinforce a lack of respect, people not being taken seriously. It can be pretty brazen. And then move forward to these things that we've just discussed and how that plays out in our culture, as far as in the workplace, as you said, or in pornography. As a matter of fact, in my work situation, I've had people in the past, women, approach me who, again, in the church, were told when they went to leadership and conveyed situations to them about what was happening in their marriages, were literally told that if they were doing what they were supposed to be doing, their husbands wouldn't have a need to view pornography, as though this is an acceptable understanding of this issue, or an acceptable reason for anybody to be viewing pornography, and just put a huge burden on them. But as it leads to human trafficking, now we're getting to the point where we've seen people literally considered as commodities, someone that can be purchased. It's led to a sense of such demand that commercial sexual exploitation and human trafficking can not only exist, but can flourish in our culture.
Oop, did we lose Donna?
Nope, I'm here.
Okay. Okay, I'm not sure what just happened, but let's continue. So continue, please, talking about human trafficking, and maybe you can jump back a second and kind of re-engage with the thought you had.
Well, really, that this is I think the basic point is that objectification can lead to this extreme that we're seeing, in the sense that people can be purchased. Yeah. That this is actually a thing that can happen, that is deemed in society as something that you know, someone chooses. For example, commercial sexual exploitation, that someone would choose to put themselves in this position, or that. And that may happen because of a lack of options. I'm not saying that there's a lot of factors that go into this, but the fact that we have a culture where this can even be considered as an option, that buying a human being for these purposes is allowed to happen, and continues to, as I said, not only exist, but can literally flourish. It's become such a lucrative situation. And what that says is that there's a huge demand for it.
Right, right. Yep. So let's start moving toward the practical and just bring this huge issue of objectification down to a very personal level. How does this impact our daughters and our granddaughters and our nieces and their friends as they grow up in this culture? What are some of the impacts of objectification?
I really believe that it fuels anxiety and insecurity. It can lead to depression. It certainly can cause body shame, eating disorders, that hyper focus on appearance that takes us away from so many other things that we could be using our brain power to work through. It continually sends the message that I am not enough. And they're, again, told, here, think about it this way. We're told that, like I said earlier, that our value lies in our appearance, that the most important thing is to be beautiful. But then we're bombarded with this imagery that is basically setting up an unattainable standard. No one looks like that. No one is ageless, poreless. The models themselves don't look like that. But on the other hand, we're led to see this imagery, these media pieces that come before us constantly, and then, but the shift that happens too. So we're taking in this messaging constantly. But then what happens is when we do get concerned, when we are worried about it, we're thought of as superficial. There's some contradictions that are definitely put out there in our culture as far as that's concerned. When you think about the fact that so much of our focus and our brain space is with this cultural obsession, it just robs us of the effects that women can have as individuals, but also as a society, what we can have in the sense of contribution. What if our attention were redirected, not only as women in the sense of our perhaps, on one hand, I like to have a sense of balance. On one hand, I don't want to say that wanting to look nice is something that's wrong. Of course not. But on the other hand, we all know that it can very easily veer into a situation where there's a hyper focus. And that is supported by the culture that we're in. So what if we can redirect that attention, whether it be our own attention or, again, society's way of looking at women, to the contributions that could be made, the contributions that could be more fully made, let's put it that way, as bringing creative ideas to the table, problem solving, peacemaking. There are studies out there that support how having a very diverse, gender diverse, as well as racially diverse in so many other ways, group working together is so beneficial in any work setting, in any community setting for that matter. So what happens is, I love this quote from Renee Engelin, that objectification, or as she puts it, beauty sickness, moves us further away from the people we want to be and the lives we want to live, and it keeps us facing the mirror instead of facing the world. Think of the differences that could be made, the strides that could be made in our culture if we can really have a paradigm shift here.
Yeah, and wouldn't it be great if our daughters and granddaughters were free to take all of who they are and bring that impact to the world and not be tied down by all the things that objectification kind of keeps them locked within. And, you know, I want that for my daughters, and, you know, I want that for everybody else's too. So, yeah, very important. Okay, so let's shift towards a few more practical things. And if you're listening and you have some questions, now would be a great time to write them down and send them into Mike, and he'll bring them into the conversation in a few minutes. But let's talk about practical things that we can do to dismantle this objectifying culture and build a culture of honor. And as I go through this, I'm going to primarily address guys because, again, we as guys need to own this, and we need to take a leading role in addressing this. But, of course, ladies, you can listen in too. these are important steps for us to take, and I think we understand that culture is about people and how they relate to each other, and so changing culture starts with changing me. And in order to change me, one of the biggest changes comes with what I call mind shift. Most of the battle here needs to happen first in our minds. Romans 12, we're aware of, says, no longer be conformed to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. So transformation and the renewing of your mind. So in this battle around objectification, there are two primary truth targets that are there on the slide in front of you. So first of all, that women are created in the image of God. Guys, if you could take some time and just reflect on that and let it go deep into you, and let it provoke this question that you ask yourself 1,000 times: this woman in front of me, how do I treat her with dignity? Ask that question, see where it leads you. If you change your thinking around how you think about women and think of her as one to treat with dignity in practical ways, then that will help stir some of the change that needs to happen in you. Secondly, the second truth is that women are whole people. Guys, come on, this is much bigger than the physical appearance of women. And so we need to ask another question. Aside from her physical appearance, what else about her is fascinating? What else about her is amazing? What else about her can I celebrate? And that will lead into deeper and more rich relationships, whether it's with a friend or a person you work with, or even your spouse. If you look beyond physical appearance, you will find so many treasures that will help bring this change, this transformation about. So next slide. If we're armed with those mindsets, then the next step we need to take is to look around. Look around in our family, look around in our church, look around in our workplace, and ask these three simple questions. Are women, first of all, respected as equals, or are they treated as second-class citizens? One of the ways that works itself out is, are women listened to? Are their ideas heard? Do they have opportunity to even share their ideas? Are they respected, or even are they invited to share their ideas on an equal level as men? And then on a even practical pay level, are women paid at an equal level as men who are doing the same job as they are? It is alarming to see the stats on places where that is not true, where men are doing the same job as women are doing, and they're getting higher pay for doing the same job. So those are things that we need to look around. We need to get the landscape around us, and where we start to see women not being treated as equals, not being treated with respect and dignity, that's where action really starts to get some teeth to it. And so let's go to the next slide. And so here are a few final practicals for building a culture of honor. So first of all, ways we can do this, first of all, by intentionally honoring honorable women and speaking up when something less than honor is happening. Guys, it should not be the woman's responsibility to speak up when she's not being treated with honor. Guys, we need to be part of that voice that insists on women being treated with honor in the workplace, in the church, in our family. Now, all women have dignity and should be treated with respect, so that's true for all women. But just like there are honorable men and not so honorable men, the same is true with women, and we need to really develop eyes for seeing the things that are honorable and make sure that we honor and celebrate them. And so intentionally honor honorable women and speak up when something less than honor is happening. Secondly, be intentional about building skill-based, gender-diverse teams and honor everyone by exploring how to fully utilize each person's capabilities. Sometimes women are on teams, but they often feel like the token woman on the team. And they're so under-recognized and they're so underutilized, it's actually dishonoring for them to be on the team. And, kudos to them. Sometimes they stick it out and, they treat the situation with more honor than the guys are treating it. But if you were to look at this on a scale of 1 to 10, if these women have the capabilities to operate on a level 8, but they're only being asked to operate on a level 2, one of the things we can do is explore how we can more fully honor who God has made them to be and to bring into fuller bearing on the group all that they bring to the table. So many women are underutilized and under-recognized in the work that we do. The third thing there is, we are using stories all the time to create movement, to raise money, to do many things that make people feel good and get their hearts engaged. And when we tell heroic and inspiring stories, we can help change the culture by including heroic and inspiring stories that are from women and the things that they've done. So often the stories we tell are about men, and that's fine because men should be honored as well. But what I'm advocating for here is an equal balance that really demonstrates that men and women are both doing very heroic and inspiring things, and it's so important that we intentionally take the opportunity to tell the inspiring stories of women's lives, the choices that they're making, the things that they're doing, and the impact that they're having. And then finally, guys, in your heart, there's a battle that needs to go on. And that battle largely revolves around this: fighting to base a sense of honor, favor, and opportunity toward women, not on gender or physical appearance, but on skill, intelligence, personality, and heart. And to impart this same vision of greatness to our girls, and to dismantle, even in our homes, what our girls are hearing on the outside, to give them this vision of what honor looks like, of what favor looks like, of what opportunity looks like, but not base it on physical appearance, but on these other things. And so those are some of the practical things that we can do. Obviously, this is just the very beginning of a conversation. Donna, I know you want to lead us through a few resources that folks can tap into if they want to go a little further with this. Can you share that with us?
Sure. We have Carolyn Heldman's TED Talk, and it's excellent, Bob. So well done on what the objectification of women looks like in our culture today, how it has escalated, how we've been really inured to its damaging effects, and what we can do individually and collectively to move forward and to see a paradigm shift. So really very well done. The next one is a fascinating article about what happened, an actual situation that happened in a workplace where inadvertently two co-workers, their sign-off, basically their signature on their emails were switched. And this was a female and a male co-worker. And the responses when an email was perceived as coming from a male as opposed to a female, and then vice versa, were really amazing. And I will just leave it at that. You'll have to read the article, but it went viral. It's really pretty interesting on many levels. And then the last one is the book by Renee Engelin, Beauty Sick, How the Cultural Obsession, that is, with appearance hurts women and girls. And she really speaks to this issue with a lot of clarity. And she's a professor at Northwestern, brings years of research, but also weaves it together with personal stories and situations that have been presented to her. And it's very readable, very accessible, and offers workable solutions for how women can move through this. So all encouraging.
Yeah, well, that sounds great. So why don't we move towards seeing if there's any questions that our listeners have today. Mike, do we have any to bring to the table?
Hi, Bob. Yeah, we have a few. Dwight was wondering if you could elaborate on maybe more specific examples or ways that a church could really combat and fight objectification inside, their culture. Are there church-specific examples you might be able to provide?
Sure. I think there's a confusion that arises because some churches have polity, meaning church government strategies that kind of dictate what women can and can't do in the church. I think we need to look a little deeper than that and just look at what is happening relationally in the church and what opportunities are there for women in the church. And so helping women explore their spiritual gifts, for example, having conversations with women that explores their interests, that draws out them talking about their skills, and even looking at how the things that they are really experts at can be brought into bear in ministries that the church is doing. And so by listening to women and what really makes their heart beat and saying, okay, well, here's this woman, the things that she's really good at, and making the connection between that would be really useful for this ministry that our church is trying to move forward with. And like Donna mentioned earlier, that whole aspect of being robbed, the church is robbed out of a lot of our effectiveness because women are so underutilized and underappreciated, and so we can help things move forward there. That's one example that I would use. I think the example of including women in leadership teams. Again, you don't have to cross lines of polity if that's an issue for you in your church, but there are so many teams typically in the average church, and making sure that they are diverse gender-wise, and that the skills and the inclinations and just all of who women are in the church, that they're brought to bear for the sake of the effectiveness of those teams. I think those are a couple of really good first steps to take, along with the power of telling inspiring stories of what the women in the church are doing, both in the church and outside of the church. If it's in their home, if it's in the workplace, in their community, whatever that looks like, to give kind of equal press to women as you do to men.
Thanks,
Right.
Bob.
I think also one of the important things is that sermons would include those biblical stories that touch on what women have done. Some of them are familiar to us, and some are really not. And there's value in the sense of being able to share that with our community, so that women can. They can't be it if they can't see it, right? And I think also for pastors and other leadership people to feel comfortable in quoting women as contributors to different work that they've done, research that they've observed, whatever they've read, perspective, including women's perspective as they share from the pulpit, has a lot of power.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And I think what we say in Sunday school with our kids, however you package your children's program, that's a great opportunity to highlight female heroes of the faith and the noble things about their lives that highlight how they applied their faith in Christ to the work that they were doing. And there are so many examples of exceptional women who have served throughout the centuries that really can be drawn on, but in my experience, just really don't get a lot of press. And so helping our girls to have females that they can identify with maybe a little more deeply than they would with a male example, I think is a really important step to take.
Absolutely.
And we had a question from Diane. She brought up a interesting comment and thought, is that a lot of the comments were really geared toward males. I wonder if you could provide some maybe specific things that females could do to work on and draw attention to objectification.
Donna, you want to take that one, or?
Well, I think that recognizing the pervasiveness of the issue is really important. Taking kind of a step back ourselves, and there's that dichotomy in a sense of recognizing to some degree that it may be happening, but also not necessarily recognizing how we're opening ourselves up to being more effective by that. And I think what I'm trying to say here is we can be more intentional about the media that we consume, about our buying choices. There are actually studies out there that show that sexism doesn't sell, and it's pervasive thought that it does, but we can really make a difference. And women have a lot of buying power, and this is just one small thing in one way, but it has impact by what we're going to be choosing to purchase for our families, for our children, for our daughters. Certainly, we can stand up for issues that are presented that are, this is just wrong. The product that we see, or for example, we all know, I think any mother knows how difficult it is to buy clothing for toddlers, for example, that doesn't look like something for teenagers many times. We can take a step back and say, hey, wait a minute, this isn't the image that I want my daughter to be inundated with. This is not what I want to consume as an adult, for that matter. So I do want to be more careful in personally in that regard. But I also believe, Bob, that what you shared was really important, that it not be just women that stand up for this issue. Men's voices are absolutely necessary and need to be heard. But also that women would be encouraged and recognize that there are ways that we can be more vocal, that we can be encouraging to one another. One of the things that objectification does is it really contributes to a sense of competitiveness. And that there's this, we don't want to be minimized by it, but on the other hand, when you are constantly being appraised in this light, it's very hard to let go of that. So how can we work together in a spirit of unity that elevates all of us?
I think too, Donna, wouldn't you say that it's important for women to kind of go deep into their own hearts and kind of look at how, if I'm a woman, just how I've been affected by this cultural swirling that's happened, and just even the priorities that I place in my own life, and how I look, and just how I'm trying to kind of advance myself forward, that kind of thing. The thing that I would hate for my daughters to do is to overemphasize the need to look good and, kind of obsessing about their physical appearance to the neglect of other aspects of who they are that really reflect the strength that God's given them. And I want them to move forward in strength and not like consumed by this this need to look good and draw the attention of others just purely through physical appearance. And so I would love for women to be able to kind of do their part in dismantling the culture by starting within themselves and just refusing to go in the direction that the culture is pushing. And I'll just mention this. One of the people that, well, actually two that are very close to who I am, they've just decided to not put up with it anymore. So when it shows up in their workplace, they are saying something, and they, they almost have this, I don't care where this goes mindset, and they are going to talk with the person who made the comment. They're going to talk with the manager who's managing in a way that really is imbalanced, you know, and they're going to try to bring change. And, you know, I'm so proud of them for taking those stands. And I do think that that's an appropriate piece of it. But I do want to come back to the idea that objectification is primarily an issue in the hearts of men, and men are the ones who need to pursue change themselves and be part of leading the change, and not place the burden of that change on the shoulders of women. All right, well, Mike, do we have any more questions? Maybe we can take one more.
We do not. That's all I have.
Okay, well, that sounds good. Well, everybody, thank you for attending. I want to just, before we go, I want to mention where we're going next month. We're actually going to continue on the same topic, and the name of the webinar is going to be called Objectification in the Church. What we can learn from your stories to help us dismantle an objectifying culture and create a culture of honor. So what I want to do is do things a little bit differently and ask you, especially if you are a woman, men, you can offer this as well. If you have a story, an experience that you feel kind of illustrates this issue of objectification, either in a negative light or in a positive light, I would love for you to send those stories to me at the email address that's on your screen there, batherton@visionnewengland.org. And I want to use those stories to create a set of principles that we can use to step forward in changing the culture. It's so important that we not address this on kind of a heady level, but really look at it on a ground level, earthy level. And so your stories are very important to help us understand what is actually going on, what you have actually experienced. And so please, if you are up for it, please send me stories to that email address, and we will talk about how we can make some practical changes in the church. Now, just so you know, I'm going to share any stories that you share with me. I'll share them generically. I'll take out any identifying information, so, you know, your name, the name of any church, the name of any person, you know, anything that would be remotely identifying, I'll pull those out. So there'll be generic stories that'll help us illustrate principles we need to take a hold of in moving forward. So Donna, thank you. It's been a rich conversation. We've obviously only been able to scratch the surface and open the door, so we will have further conversation next time, and really appreciate your insight and all the work you do.
Thank you so much, Bob, for the opportunity. It was great. Great beginning to an important conversation.
Awesome. So on behalf of myself and Mike Froning and Vision New England, thank you for joining us, and we hope to that you'll join the next conversation on July 11th.